booted up Project Zomboid, only to find out that the save had been corrupted. So I did what any creator or Project Zomboid player would do when they lose a character. I loaded up a new world, named it, changed a few rules and set the date to day 9, picked my character, and started again. On day 9 of my newest save, I spent pretty much the bulk of it reclaiming what I lost from the last save. I got my gated housing back, found a much better barricade for my front gate, and was now on the hunt for some gas because the last time that I left off I was preparing to take on the Rosewood Penitentiary. This was still the plan. I mean, I wasn't going to do another video about preparing, and I know that it was definitely a bad idea when it's literally your second day of a new Project Zomboid save and I was trying to take on a prison, in which previous comments have warned me about, and that it's going to be even harder because I don't have any loot to my name, no guns, keys, or any decent melee weapons, but hopefully it'll make for one hell of a story to tell in the future. Anyways, back to the recap. While I was looking for gas, I was lucky enough to find a single-shot rifle in the bed of a truck not far from my new base. Turns out that it took revolver ammunition as well, which was a lot more common than the usual rifle ammo. I could use this to pick off specific infected that could be carrying vital loot. On the subject of infected, something has changed about them. First off, while I was taking back my base on day 1, technically day 8, I noticed that between the hours of 8 PM and 9 AM the infected begin to suddenly move faster. They have also grown in number and have much better sight and hearing during this time. This would make night raids, and as well as night combat, a lot more risky. So, after a hard day's work of reclaiming what I lost from the last save, and piling a bunch of dead bodies, burning them, and then looking for gas, I decided it was best to sleep until the early hours of day 10. In the early hours of day 10, I'd come up with a plan on how I was going to take on the prison. Step 1 was to move that Forest Ranger's vehicle into the car park of the prison. Step 2 was to switch on the sirens so as to bring out any large number of infected away from the armory. And then step 3 was to farm any of the infected that were in the armory for keys to enter it, after which I would move on to my second objective. Objective 2 was, when I was on my way back from the prison, I would raid the police armory as well, where step 1 would be to farm any infected for keys to that armory, step 2 would be to grab whatever I could cram inside the hopefully heavy prison bags, and step 3 to get home and celebrate with a successful day's raid. Ambitious? Very. Idiotic, and overall a stupid thing to do, especially with no experience or loot. Even more so, but imagine what kind of story this would make if I actually pulled it off. I should also mention that with this new save I unfortunately didn't have any way to get into the garage, so I couldn't access any weapons. It also meant that my base would not be fortified, so I decided that that would be my objective for the next video. Checking the car park closest to my base, I found a truck with some keys inside. However, its condition was a little worse for wear, and if I was going to try and take on the prison, the last thing I want was to be surrounded by a horde and end up with some engine failures. Feeling some mild effects from some hunger, I was lucky to pass by Jenny's table. I don't know who Jenny was, but hopefully she didn't mind me breaking in to grab some free samples. There were a couple of infected inside, one of which was a police officer. On my first day I was lucky enough to find a holster immediately after spawn, so now all I needed was some armour, which this officer was kind enough to gift me, as well as her service weapon. After dealing with one more infected, I grabbed myself some leftovers and continued on my mission to look for some gas. There was a fairly large car park just opposite Jenny's, so if there was going to be any sign of gas, this was going to have to do. There wasn't much in the way of loot inside any of the cars, however, I was struck with some luck when I managed to siphon 2 lots of gas from a car at the back of the lot. It also must have belonged to a CSGO player because in the glove box there was a perfect condition karambit knife. With my mission for gas complete, I decided to head back home to look for a vehicle I could use it with. That's when I noticed that Jenny's had a hidden second story, so I thought I'd give it a quick look over. Where it turns out, Jenny was waiting. I know I should be expecting infected to be behind these doors by now, but it still scares the crap out of me. I'm human, alright? I'm gonna forget stuff. Jenny's apartment didn't really have much to offer. However, I did steal her corkboard to use for my situation room. I think every survivor should have some form of situation room. I mean, an apocalypse is a pretty big situation to deal with. On my way back home, I spotted what looked like to be some kind of bar on the edge of town. During my first ever Project Zomboid playthrough, I found a shotgun behind a bar, so it was worth having a look inside. In which there were a few infected inside who died while they were waiting for this whole thing to blow over, so I decided to window camp the couple that actually noticed me to avoid any further danger, and take out the last infected silently, as I didn't have any clue how many infected were on the second floor. Unfortunately, there weren't any shotguns, or Winchesters, behind the bar, and nothing that I could use on the second floor, so I left with nothing but the knowledge that this could be a pretty decent place to have a multiplayer base if I could convince some friends to join. Back home, I quickly stored everything that I found that morning and placed my corkboard map before heading back out to look for a vehicle. Back at the park ranger's truck, I must have forgot to check for loot because when I looked in the back of the bed I found a fire axe. This would make surviving my big raid the next morning so much easier. I walked for a while, unable to find any vehicles that I could use to move the ranger's truck, where at the police station I came across an infected officer with a shotgun. As much as I'd like to use this for the prison raid, I didn't have any ammo for it. All of the ammunition was behind some locked doors and surrounded by infected, so unfortunately it would have to be left behind. Outside the station, I finally found a working vehicle with its keys nearby, as well as a small gun case with some mags inside. So, driving my newly liberated car to the truck, I backed it up close enough to winch it, and began transporting it to the prison car park. Or so I hoped I would. Because in Project Zomboid, smaller vehicles will always struggle to drag bigger ones behind them, which meant every now and again I would have to stop the vehicle, floor it to max speed, and repeat the process again in order to get the truck moving. I'm honestly surprised how long I did this, because eventually I saw that this wasn't going to work. So, checking a couple of cars ahead of me, I ended up losing track of time because it was now 8 PM, and I was suffering from negative effects in the middle of a main road surrounded by much faster infected. Before I could unwinch the car from a park ranger's, a group of infected got too close to complete the action, so instead I ran all the way back home, dodging groups of fast infected left and right, dealing with a couple of infected outside of my perimeter, I jumped the fence, washed up before bed, and slept knowing that tomorrow was going to be a very eventful raid. And so, on the early morning of a rainy raid day, I hopped the fence and made my way to the blue truck. If the small car wasn't going to move the park ranger's truck, I guessed that perhaps another truck could do the job. On site, I only had to quickly deal with a small group of infected before detaching the car from the truck. And attaching it to my new one. The truck seemed to be working so far, if only moving a tiny bit faster than the car before. This time I wouldn't have to worry about speed, but engine stalls. But the truck managed to successfully drag the Rangers to the outside of the prison. Once parked, I jumped in the Rangers vehicle and brought the noise as a group of infected slowly made their way towards the distraction. Taking a quick peek inside. Yep, they can hear it. Patiently waited, and then finally made my way into the security building. Alright, time to see if I can make Project Zomboid combat entertaining.
This ain't what you want, bitch, I'm a fucking phenomenon. Release bombs and go tick tick. Boom, you blow me, that head missing. I'm a phenomenon. Stacking cheese like it's Parmesan. 8 different flows, call me Octomom. I'm moving fast with the Autobahn, and I'm so I'm not.
Oh, yep, that is far too many to deal with at once. Alright, backup plan. Just gonna climb through here, and now I'm just gonna window cam them. Yeah, this is gonna have to do for now.
Sick, twisted, gifted, can't copy, printed, can't hold me down. I shape shift, I'm liquid. I killed this beat, I might get convicted. They know how I move, it was predicted. Persistent, spoken into existence, so consistent, no assistance. Hear me once, become addicted. If I rap it, then I live it. There's no cap, and I'll be breaking this. This ain't what you want, bitch, I'm a fucking phenomenon.
Alright, I think that's enough of that. Now I can go up to... Yep, and of course there's like 20 of them behind that door. Yeah, no, that's fine, that's fine. I'm just gonna... Yep, you know what, I'm just gonna go outside and leave them now. This is... I'm done. After playing 10 minutes of cat and mouse with the infected, I was finally able to make it further than the security building entrance. Using a key I picked up off one of the 35 infected, yes I counted them, I unlocked the door, closed it, and caught a small bit of rest. I definitely underestimated the amount of infected. Sitting down, I ate some food I prepared and began to
spiral into a crisis of morality after I butchered what used to be 35 regular people.
Then I picked myself back up and began to... A helicopter flew over. In my direction. From the park ranger's truck. Now I wasn't sure if that horde of undead that I lured away using the sirens is going to start rushing the security building I was currently in. Acting as if I was on a time limit, I quickly grabbed whatever I could that would help me back home. Shotgun shells, pistols, ammunition for rifles, all of it. Once I was practically full, it was time to face whatever was waiting for me outside the first floor windows. Making my way down the stairs, nothing. The infected was still distracted by the sirens, and at this point I'd thought that I'd try my luck with the watchtowers, which also had some ammunition inside. You know what, I'm good with what I've got. So, all in all, it turned out to be a pretty successful prison raid. Yeah, there was some panic in some areas, but I'm alive, I'm not infected, and I've got a bag full of ammo and guns, so Objective 1 out of the way. Now it was time for Objective 2. After taking a small power nap inside the backseats of a nearby car, my negative effects were gone now. Breaking in, there was nothing. No infected whatsoever. As safe as I was, it also meant that I had no way of getting into the armory, and I was going to have to make a quick detour. If you can remember, there is a fire station directly opposite the police station with a supply room full of tools, as well as medical supplies. All I'd need from that room is a ballpen hammer and a screwdriver, and I can have both the doors down before sunup. And so, on the morning of day 11, I climbed over the fence, discreetly moved towards the fire station, as if the night wasn't already making the zombies tougher, they would be wearing firefighter clothing, which was pretty much armor. I made sure to check for alarms first, so as to not turn this Walking Dead themed session into a Left 4 Dead one. With no alarms, I could break into the building unnoticed and get into the supply room. Checking the tool rack, I immediately found the hammer that I needed to get through the door. While I was inside the station, I saw it fit to resupply my medical materials from the first aid station, dealing with only one partially armoured infected, and began making some sterilised bandages for future occasions. With the tools in hand, I quickly made my way back to the station while looking over all the loot that I grabbed from the prison. Arriving at the armory, I took out the tools and began making quick work in breaking down the doors. Once inside, I dropped whatever items I didn't need anymore and went through what was left. As expected, there wasn't much in the way of guns or ammo, and I suppose that's what happens when you set guns and ammo to rare. On my way out the station, I grabbed a quick beverage by the cooler and wanted to try my hand at using pistols instead of a shotgun, because we've all seen how good I am with those at close range. My God, I hit stationary target! The walk home was surprisingly quiet until I reached my gates, where a small, quick-moving group was waiting for me. I really didn't have the energy or weapons to deal with them, so I climbed my fence, ran inside, and hunkered down for the rest of the night. I know that one of the steps was to celebrate when I got back home, but after the day that I had, I celebrated by sleeping comfortably in a warm bed, uninjured and safe. When I awoke, the infected were no longer outside my gates, and I had gotten rid of most of my negative effects. Except for food, which was my next problem. After sorting through what I got from the prison, as well as this police station, it was time for a new objective. You see, there was still one item that I required. One that was slowly becoming more rare and more important as days carried on. What I needed next was a can opener. Yeah, I know it sounds crazy having found guns and food and working vehicles, but I could not for the life of me find a can opener. So, before moving to reinforce my base, I needed to find a can opener first. This also gave me a decent excuse to scavenge the most residential side of Rosewood. Using the small car I found on Day 9, I didn't need to drive far in order to reach the residential side. I did a quick loop around the neighbourhood to check out what the infected situation was like, and after coming to a small area that was practically empty. In fact, it was a bit unsettling. Never mind, I spoke too soon. Climbing through the window that the infected kindly left for me open, I checked the counters and finally found myself a can opener. With that sorted, I could finally head home.